people are willing to give you information in a rate equivalent to the trust that you have developed with them.
Hey, podcast listener, you're about to discover insider tips, tricks, and secrets to making more sales and converting more prospects into customers with email marketing. For more information about the Email Marketing Podcast or the Autoresponder Guide, go to dropdeadcopy.com/podcast. Hello, it's John McIntyre here, the Autoresponder Guy, and it's time for episode 103 of the McMethod Marketing Podcast, where you'll discover how to get more customers with less effort by using automated email marketing machines. Today I'll be talking to Mitch Lapides about 2015 trends in email marketing. Now, you might be wondering who Mitch is. Basically, I wanted to go and get some enterprise email marketing guys with agencies that work with bigger clients. So instead of having a freelancer or a consultant or a big name copywriter like John Carlton or Perry Marshall say, I wanted to get some people who are working with corporates, big Fortune 500 companies, to find out how they do email marketing, because it's all very valid, and this is where millions and millions of dollars get invested in the software and in the creation of these campaigns. So I wanted to get Mitch on. He has a company that works with these kind of clients, and find out how he does it, what sort of projects they're doing, what's going on in the industry, how the industry is changing, and got some really interesting insights. That's what today is about. To get the show notes for this episode, go to themcmethod.com/103. Now, 3 things. Number 1, reviews. I don't have a review to read out this week, so I'd like you to head over to iTunes, search for the McMethod, leave me a review, and tell me what you think about the show. Be honest, I can take it. Now, the other thing is, listening to this podcast, you might be thinking that you need to get something like this set up for yourself, but you don't have the time. You don't have, you can't join, you can't go and buy a training program and do it yourself. You're flat out. You're a business owner. Literally, do not have the time. That's where I come in. I work with people like you to take this sort of stuff off your hands, create the campaign for you, so you can focus on growing the business and doing what you need to do. And if you want to learn more about that, shoot me an email, john@themcmethod.com. We'll have a quick chat on Skype this week or next to discuss your project, and we'll go from there. Have some fun, get you some customers, get you some more freedom with one of these automated email marketing machines. Yeah. Now, I got one McMaster's Insight of the Week, and that is speak up, ask for help. Now, what do I mean by that? And this is one of those things where a lot of people try to go it alone, try to do it themselves, do it solo. And while that's admirable, if you really want to get ahead in life, you have to ask for help. You have to ask for feedback. And you have to be open to receiving negative feedback. And in all honesty, the best entrepreneurs I know are actually fantastic at taking on negative feedback. They love to get negative feedback because knowing where they suck really helps them and gives them the information they need to take things to the next level. Okay? Now, that's why inside McMaster's there's actually a training forum where you can learn, you can go in there and post questions and get feedback on your emails and check out the templates and check out the training and ask questions and bounce ideas around. And this is the kind of feedback I'm talking about. You can post in there and I'll reply within a couple of days to let you know if the email sucks, maybe the hook's wrong, maybe the story's a bit off. You're going to hear this kind of stuff. But it's only for people who are ready to take that kind of feedback. Okay, that's McMaster's. If you want to learn more about McMaster's, the private training community I have for people who want to grow their business with email marketing, go to themcmethod.com/McMaster's and you get all the information there. Now that's that for today. Let's get into this interview with Mr. Mitch Lapides. It's John McIntyre here, the Autoresponder Guy. I'm here with Mitch Lapides. Now, Mitch is the former Chief Technology Officer from Gartner, which is an American research company, far bigger than Forrester. So, and he's done a bunch of other stuff, and I'll turn it over to him in a second to give you the full details. He's now heading up Fulcrum Tech, which is a email marketing agency. And what's interesting, and why I got Mitch on the show today, was I wanted to bring on perhaps an alternative perspective. I've spoken to a lot of copywriters, a lot of marketers with, a variety of size businesses. What I wanted to do is get someone with an agency that works with, different companies. So instead of working with, an internet marketing person just to set up a sales funnel, we're working at much bigger, at a much higher level. And I wanted to find out what goes on at that level and see what's out there, what opportunities are there, what trends are happening in 2015. And really, I think this is going to be interesting just to get a different perspective, because I think this is one of the first times I've spoken to someone like Mitch. So I think this conversation is going to be quite interesting. Mitch, how are you going?
Great. Doing great. And thanks so much for having me today, John.
Good to have you here, man. So, before we get into some of the specific topics we're going to talk about today, can you give the listener a quick background on, who you are, what your history is, and what you're doing now?
Sure, sure. So, John, I've been in the interactive industry for a number of years. I'd say I was one of the first folks who really helped develop it. Back in my early publishing days, I developed some of the first websites and e-commerce sites out there. Before starting Fulcrum Tech, I was, as you mentioned, Chief Technology Officer at Gartner, where I also led the team to recreate Gartner.com, which was a very huge website of theirs. And following that, I was at Reed Elsevier. Most people don't recognize that name, but they do recognize a lot of their properties, such as LexisNexis and Harcourt and Connors and some of those folks. And I headed up as Executive VP, and I was also on the board at their Health Sciences division, where I managed for their divisions, the mobile application division, online journals and reference products, as well as online training and education. So it was a great background. It was not only building interactive technologies out for these various companies, but it was also a lot of marketing, strategic marketing, and tactical marketing. And in those days, early days, you had to not only figure out what to do, but you had to actually get it done. So you had to learn a lot of the technology along the way, which of course I've brought into Fulcrum Tech when I founded it just 10 years ago.
Yeah. Okay. I mentioned that back then when the whole industry was getting going, there wasn't these websites and companies out there because you can get software these days for every little function that you need in any business that runs online, whether it's collecting emails or setting up the campaigns. Whereas back then, I imagine that the technology was quite primitive and you might have had to put together the things yourselves.
Oh my gosh, yes. If we had the tools that we had today back then, it would have been amazing. I mean, we were building the first shopping carts and the first reporting tools directly off the website, and trying to marry some kinds of web analytics from log files and so forth, trying to understand how people are getting there and tracking through the conversions. And in the early days, you just didn't have those kinds of tools like you do today, and everything was built from scratch. You had no choice but to do it that way.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, so before we, another thing I'm interested in talking about is tell me a bit about Fulcrum Tech and how it compares to, say, like I've spoken to a lot of, copywriters or, fairly small business owners. It'd be interesting to find out sort of what Fulcrum Tech does and what sort of clients you're working with and how it differs to, say, suppose a copywriter who's just working with clients to write them emails.
Yeah, that's a great question. So early on, when I first founded the company, I had to decide whether I wanted this to be a full-service agency where we built websites and ultimately social media programs and email and everything else. And as I dove deeper into email itself, I learned how many different aspects there were to email and to doing it right. And it was a great marrying of publishing to marketing. And really what you're doing in the email space is building relationships with content. So when you talk about your copywriters, the content is a critical piece to everything that we do. However, in order to do and develop an email program appropriately and the best that it could be, you have to really understand, as we've learned early on, there are a lot of factors that affect the success of an email marketing program. So when we're talking about an email marketing agency versus a designer or a copywriter or someone who may have a part or even do some of those programs themselves, we're typically bringing everything that you need in order to build out an effective email marketing program. And that includes everything from the strategy. So what is the messaging? What are the KPIs, the key performance indicators? What is it that we need to do to accomplish those goals? And then we lay out the entire program ultimately as a campaign map and lay out all the different emails that are going to be part of a program. And we're not talking about just a newsletter. If you're in e-commerce, you're talking about a whole variety of emails. It could be shopping cart abandonment, replenishment emails, nurturing campaigns, welcome campaigns, birthday emails, mobile opt-ins. I mean, there's so many different elements that form the foundation of a strong email program. So that strategic piece is a big part of what we do. And then once you figure out the strategy, then we have experts who build out that messaging into the right copy, into the design, and then we have to code it. And then these days, everything has to be coded in a mobile responsive way. So now you're getting into the technology area of what we do. And then a lot of companies need help getting onto the right email service provider platform, and we'll help select those and get them implemented and get the right campaign set up within those tools. And then once you do all that, then you have to come back around and start to optimize everything and make it better and better and better. So then we get into heavy analytics and statistics and modeling and predictive analytics and all of that good stuff. So you reach much further than just a single or even a two-person show, in terms of contributors, into a full set of folks where it takes a team to do email marketing right. When you get to the larger types of programs that really need to scale.
So it's sort of like what you're doing is it's like that full service, like a full service email marketing agency. So it might not be everything, but when it comes to email, It's everything from the very beginning with the strategy all the way to the end, which never really ends, which is that testing and tweaking phase.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
And then give me an example of like what sort of companies are you? Because I get the picture that this isn't happening for John Smith, who's just started a brand new internet company, with a domain. He's basically a really, really small business. It sounds like it's not that guy. It's more likely going to be, we're talking bigger companies that are using bigger programs, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we still do work with some of the smaller folks. The best companies are the ones who really want to grow and are invested in the growth. And the kinds of companies we work with are e-commerce companies, professional services companies. Education is a big market for us. Medical and healthcare, given a lot of my medical publishing background, it's kind of an area where we've gravitated on early on. Publishing. Boston Globe's a client. Dunkin' Donuts is a client. We've worked with automobile dealers. You were telling me before that you had some folks who you work with in the automobile space. So, it's really across the board. The concepts are similar across for everybody. And, it's just a matter of building out the right messaging for each of those different audiences and building out the right program. But, it's email marketing works across all of these industries, which is really cool.
Well, what I like to come back to when I'm talking to people on this show is marketing's a funny thing, or even just business even. But it's a lot of marketing, for example, because that's what we're doing with email. Is just creating that relationship and cultivating it, and then along the way you're making offers, which is generating the sales and generating the growth. But ultimately, it comes back to those that fundamental idea of you've got to build a good relationship and you've got to communicate with people.
Yeah.
So I've got here that with let's talk about the 2015 trends in email marketing. That what sort of stuff are you seeing going on right now and in the coming year and the coming years, and how is the industry changing, or is it going to be the same as it's always been?
Great question. My colleagues and I, we talk about the various trends, and on one hand, we see things like increased personalization of emails, and we've been talking about one-to-one marketing for 10 years with email. So it's interesting. In 2015, we see that really coming into its own because the technologies are now catching up to the point where you can actually build out one-to-one emails much more readily with better and better tools that are out there. So a big trend is to be able to leverage the behavioral aspects of your website in terms of tying your web analytics to your email analytics, so you can start to send materials and send emails to people who, let's say, visit a certain section of your site. Or there are now a growing number of email service providers who are automatically building profiles of visitors to their websites from email. And then you can turn around and use that information right back into your email to say, wow, this person reads a lot of articles about Google. They must be interested in Google. So if we're a news site, maybe we should serve up more articles about Google whenever they come up. You can get that specific. And relevance is one of the foundations of email. And as Seth Godin speaks in his Permission Marketing book, which is a great book if you haven't read it, it's a quick read. And he talks about people need to expect email for it to be successful, and it needs to be personalized and relevant. So that's really one of the big trends today is that content is able to be much more relevant today.
Yeah, absolutely.
And another big one is real-time content. Having content pop up, just the right content if you happen to be in geo proximity of a store that you happen to be on their list. And there are tools like Movable Ink and Power Inbox and Live Clicker and those types of tools out there that are really great at helping to deliver kind of that real-time content, which is pretty cool stuff.
I like that. So, like, if I'm in a database for a store that's in New Jersey, for example, to pick a U.S. Place, and I'm driving through the area, they might trigger an email that goes to me and says, "Hey, you've got here's a deal. Come into our store and we'll sell you something."
Yeah, well, even better is if you get their mobile number and you can actually do some mobile marketing, then you can send them a text message, and then you can have them respond to it and perhaps trigger an email that goes out with a coupon or something that's hot in the store today. If it's a perishable, if it's a clothing store or whatever. But it's it's all about trying to speak to people in the context that they want to be spoken to and at the right time and place. And that's just becoming more and more feasible today as these technologies really come into their own.
Right. I mean, one thing that I find, this idea of one-to-one email marketing sounds fascinating because some people have asked me, like, people come to me and say, well, how many segments should I have in my audience? Or how many, when I'm splitting up that audience or splitting up, say, a sales funnel that I'm creating, how many different sales funnels do I need? Do I need one for each audience? Can I just use one for the whole thing? Like, it's people are really challenged by this. And one thing that I've often said is that in an ideal world, you'd have one sales funnel or one sales process for every individual person. But the only reason we don't do that is because it's up until now, it sounds like that's been completely overwhelming in terms of the amount of resources that you have to spend to create another sales process or sales funnel for every single individual in the in the potential audience. So it sounds like with this one-to-one email marketing, like you're talking about, and I've heard other people doing this with guys like Ryan Levesque, who when someone joins the email list, for example, joins the database, they're going to go through a survey. So the first thing they get asked a question, they put their email address in, and then on the next page of that little form, there's another question, and so you could have as many questions as you want, and each question then gets dropped into a hidden field in the email software. And then when the emails go out later on, they can drop in those variables throughout the email. So it starts to create much more of that, what you're talking about, one-to-one email marketing.
Yeah, well, what you just raised is actually something that I would like to emphasize because it goes beyond, that's just a great best practice. So, you talk about collecting that kind of information right after someone signs up for an email. As you probably know, one of the highest open rates for emails is that welcome email. So your best chance right after someone signs up for your newsletter or your promotional campaigns or whatever it might be is that welcome email. So they open it up and they're already engaged. They're already excited about the fact that they just signed up for something that that you just now are sending them, and they're going to respond. So the chances that they're going to go fill out that survey are the best from that welcome campaign. So it's amazing how many people still don't send out a welcome email or even a welcome campaign. But when you throw in a survey to collect really relevant information about your business, don't ask for irrelevant stuff because if you're not using it, then you're just going to annoy your subscribers ultimately. But then you can turn around and start using that. And as I always say, people are willing to give you information in a rate equivalent to the trust that you have developed with them. So the more trust that you build with them, the more information they're going to give you. So ask them for a few really key pieces of information at the beginning, which you can then use for that one-to-one marketing. But don't let that be the last time you ask for them. If you give them a little more information about something else, or you ask them about their opinion on something, or if you give them some data or some information that they value, and then ask them another question about what they value, then, it starts to become a conversation, and you're building out their personal profile as you are sharing and building trust and giving them value along the way.
Yeah, I like
that.
And
imagine what happens when you've built out, extreme trust with them. Then they're willing to pay you potentially for whatever it is you might be selling.
Yeah.
But you've got to build the trust first.
Yeah. I like this too of like treating it as an ongoing process instead of something you just do in this welcome email and then, forget about it and never even think about it again. That the trust building process and also the data gathering process should be, an ongoing organic thing that never really ends for as long as you're in business, because everything's always going to be changing and you're going to basically be staying up to date with what's going on in your industry and your audience.
Absolutely. And it's a great way to stay engaged with your audience. If you see that people are falling off and not opening the emails, then try to look back maybe at what they did click on early on. What was it about them that got them interested in your program to begin with, and then maybe go back to them with a couple 3-question survey to see if they can you can re-engage them with a little information and give them some value in response to that too. So yeah, it's really cool.
Okay. What about replies? Because I've spoken to a few people and they've mentioned that when you can get, say, a couple of, someone to reply to, the specific number I've heard is if you can get someone to reply to 2 emails, so let's say the welcome email and then another follow-up email that says, did you get my email? Once you get them to reply twice, you're going to get like a green pass into the inbox.
Yeah. So that is a fantastic question or comment. I was just at a conference last week where I was listening to a panel of the folks who manage the inboxes, in effect, on the servers of AOL and Comcast and Microsoft and Google. And one of there are multiple factors that affect someone getting in in terms of you getting into their inbox. All right, it's not just reply though. I mean that definitely helps, and it's very clear that physically replying to an email or getting a reply to an email is a big positive check mark in the in that positive side of the ledger, so to speak. But there are many other factors also. So that's not the only thing that's going to drive you being able to get into the inbox for those folks and to stay in the inbox. If you get someone to reply to 2 emails and then you inundate them with email for the next 5 weeks and they mark you as spam a couple times, you're done. Yeah. Or if they start deleting your emails without opening, another big negative mark on the negative side of the ledger. So deliverability is something that you have to manage in an ongoing way, and we could talk for a whole half hour just about deliverability as well. But it's the reply is a really important metric that a lot of people actually do not realize, that it's not so much about the clicks, but it's about the replies and the opens.
And even too, I like, when I think about that, part of it's just about getting in the inbox, but the other part of it is that someone who's replying to the email, they're just going to be more engaged. So they're going to be, like, if they've taken the time to hit reply and type out some sort of response to you, they're one of the hottest, to me, I think they're one of the hottest leads on that list.
Totally.
So how about, you mentioned before we started talking about email ROI, that it was something you were really passionate about. So talk to me about that and why it's so important and how you get it.
Mm-hmm. So, ROI, return on investment, of course, is what that stands for. In many agencies and a lot of people who I've spoken to email about over the years, they say, well, how much is an email campaign going to cost me? And we talk about all the things that go into a campaign like we just did a few minutes ago. And they go, wow, that sounds like a lot of money. I don't know. I don't think I have the money to do that. And then we start talking about, well, how much does one of your products cost? And they say, well, each one costs about $25. And how many does someone typically purchase in a typical shopping cart clothes for you? And they say, well, our average order is about $100. And what's your gross margin? Gross margin is your revenue minus your direct costs of that product. So you say, well, it's about 50%. So for every order I get worth $100, I'm getting $50. So then we look at the cost of an email program, okay, putting together all those campaigns, the strategy, the messaging, the design, and the coding, and everything else. And then we divide that 50 into the cost, and suddenly an email program doesn't look so expensive anymore. When we say, well, how big is your list? And they say, well, my list is about 25,000 right now, and how fast is it growing? And we look at that, and there are all these factors that affect ultimately what you can squeeze out of that list. And at the end of the day, what really matters is what you make as a profit, not what it costs you. Okay. So then once you get people to understand once people realize that calculation for ROI, then they say, well, how do I really calculate that? And how I want to do it over, over a year's period. And I've been trying to convince my boss for a year to invest more in email marketing. It seems to be a really strong channel for us, but I just don't understand how to get the numbers to work to show them that. So, early on we created, these spreadsheets that were really complicated and sophisticated and so forth. And we figured out all the tricks of extrapolating the numbers out and so forth. We actually have a tool now on our website. We've converted those spreadsheets to a single tool that's for free to your audience. If you just go there and find it at forcomtech.net, there's a right in the horizontal nav, it's called Roi Goal Setter right at the top. And you can go in and put in all those factors, and you can show yourself what you're actually going to get as a return on your investment for your email program. So you can say, well, John, what if I improve my copy and I improve my click-through rate by a 0.5 percentage point. So I go from, let's say, 2% to 2.5%. And I play with my subject lines, and I get those up from, let's say I get my open rates up to about from 20% just to 22% on average. And you start putting some of those numbers in, it does not take long for you to get a 20-30% improvement in your ROI or in your revenue base. And that makes it really easy to see the value of email. And it's just phenomenal what you can generate with email with just a little bit of improvement. And that's why ROI is so exciting.
Absolutely. And I think right here, one of the interesting things is it's also, like what you've done there is it's also one of the best ways to, if you're speaking to a client or speaking to, to a potential client, that's how you've really got to talk about it, is even before you mention the price, run them through, all right, so let's go through your numbers. Here's your cost, here's the average purchase price, and run them through all those different things. And say, all right, so if we improve it by this, basically just do the calculator, do sort of like an ROI calculator on paper with them on the phone or in person, and then say, all right, so we're looking at a potential return of X, Y, X, so is it worth investing Y to make it happen? And obviously Y is a percentage of whatever X is. And once you've done those numbers, the client's usually like, oh, of course, yeah, that's so cheap, let's do it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's very exciting. It's very cool.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of fun. I was just actually working through an ROI Goal Setter model with a prospect just last week, and I think that they were sitting at about $125,000 from their email program at the time, and they wanted to know, well, what could we do to get it to $250,000? And we showed them with just really, really modest improvements in terms of, if you grow the list a little bit and you improve that open rate and the click-through rate, and that's about it, that we're there.
Yeah.
And, it's not that hard. You just have to know what your goals are. And then you can figure out, well, okay, so how am I going to get those there now?
Yeah, and especially with a company that's already getting a certain amount of leads and they've got software set up and they're looking to optimize it, that's often one of the best positions to be in because they've already got the momentum behind them.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if someone already has a list that's performing and they haven't done a lot of testing and improvement, getting a strong ROI is as long as you put the right programs in place, an ROI is going to be typically very feasible.
Yeah. Okay. So we're almost at the time. So the last thing is let's talk about testing, because you mentioned that's another thing that you're really passionate about. So what's when it comes to testing? Tell me about that.
Love it. So with testing, we, as I was mentioning to you early on before we got onto the call, a lot of marketers, you'll see folks who are very comfortable with the creative and the graphics, and they're not as comfortable with the numbers, and they want to rely on others or they feel like they can't do the numbers. But I want to encourage everyone to, if you're doing email marketing, that you can do the numbers. There are tools out there to make it really, really easy for you. So, for example, let's say that you have a list of 50,000 people or 10,000 or whatever the list size is, and you want to try to improve your open rates. And if you're trying to improve your open rates, you're typically going to be playing with your subject line or your from name, your preview pane, those types of things. And you're going to try to identify what is a statistically significant change between, let's say, an A/B split test. So that's when you take one group of 5,000 and put it up against another group of 5,000, each with a different subject line. And let's say you get a result of a 20% open rate from one and a 23% open rate from the other. And the question is, a lot of people say, oh, well, obviously the 23% won. Well, it may have won or it may not have won in some cases, depending upon the size of your sample and so forth. And you just run it through a quick calculator, and there's a million of them out on the web if you just type in statistical significance calculator. And then you can see whether that difference in your specific sample is statistically significant. And if it's not, you should run your test again. And if it is, then you potentially leverage it and use it for maybe rolling out to the rest of your list tomorrow. Those types of things. So, doing those kinds of tests are just tremendous. And we took one client for a set of holiday campaigns that they did in the previous year versus the next year. What we did is we went in and we looked at their subject lines. We looked at the lists that they were using. So they had a bunch of different lists. We looked at the time of day that those emails went out. We looked at the calls to action, the words in terms of the calls to action that we used. And we just tested and tested and tested again. We did several rounds of testing, and by the end of just the holiday season, we drove up an 87% improvement in sales over the previous year, and a 62% improvement in open rates. And that's just setting up some really solid, well thought out tests. And everybody can do that with some good strategic thinking, and obviously you have to have a reasonably sized list to be able to pull that off. But it's all about testing. There's so much science in email marketing, in addition to some of the art. The testing is just really where the rubber hits the road with email.
Absolutely. I mean, one thing I tell people is that I can sit down with them and work through their who their prospect is, what they're trying to sell, how to connect that, what sort of messaging they need to have. But at the end of the day, and this is what a lot of people don't understand about messaging and the copywriting side of it, is that you can research it and write it and get it as tight and as amazing as possible. But at the end of the day, you still need to test it to find out, test it with the audience to find out what works. And until you've done that, you don't really know what's working or not.
It's so true. And John, how many times have you thought that A was going to win over B and then the other one won? I mean, it's like, you just don't know. Every audience is different, and the markets are different, and the sunspots go one way one day. It's just there's so many factors that you just can't expect and can't anticipate. And like you say, do a little testing, and the answer becomes very evident.
Cool, absolutely. All right, so right on time. But before we go, if the listener's more interested in what you're doing in Fulcrum Tech and maybe even working with you, where is the best place for them to go and do that?
Well, I would point them to our website, which is fulcrumtech.net. That's fulcrumtech.net. We have a contact form right on our website. You can also find us at info@fulcrumtech.net. We'd love to chat with anyone who's excited about email. If you want to bounce something off of me or anyone else, we'd love to do that. So we're here to help the world of email marketing grow. And if you've got a project, we'd be happy to talk to you about that too.
Cool. Fantastic. Well, Mitch, thanks for coming on the show. It's been great.
Thanks for having us, John, and best to you.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening. If you want to discover more insider tips, tricks, and secrets about driving sales with email marketing, sign up for daily email tips from the autoresponder guy. Go to dropdeadcopy.com/podcast. Sign up, confirm your email address, and I'll send you daily emails on how to improve your email marketing and make more sales via email. You'll find out why open rates don't matter and the 7-letter word that underlies all effective marketing, and much more.